All right, so my name is Louise Campbell Anthony with the affiliate. I'm the affiliate director here with the Peacekeeping Task Force, and we are doing our advisory series here with Bobby. And I want Bobby to go ahead to introduce yourself. Tell me what assembly you're on and your professional background.
Okay, so my name is Bobby Sorello. I'm here in Nevada. Okay, my professional background is complicated and it's intertwined. So let's start with the most relevant, I guess. I so I joined the police department, right? I was an EMT. Okay, let's start back there. I learned this. I learned what was going on and had thoughts in my head from basically around 15 or 16. Okay, so that's where I started volunteering as an EMT and got exposure to all this stuff before a lot of things were incorporated. My first volunteer ambulance company was out of VFW, and we still had literally station wagons, um, operating at that time. Anyway, um, I guess what changed my perception was um, 9/11. Okay, I was working both sides of the river before 9/11. Again, like around maybe 95, 94. I went to school as a junior EMT woodchuck, right? And about 95, I graduated and it went on from there. So I used to like cut school and, just answer ambulance calls. That was my thing. So, 9/11 happened. It's a whole nother video series that we could do. That's kind of where it started for me. That's what kind of
Mhm.
put the perception and, oh, there's more than what's going on here. And I met a lot of people at that 9/11. Um, a lot of people at 9/11 because we were, well, so growing up in North Jersey, right, is it's very Italian town. So, think of all the stigmas, they're all true. So, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
part of that area is like the sixth borough of New York, so anywhere from like, all the North Jersey, the whole thing.
Mhm.
I did EMS there and saw a lot of things that nobody talks about. Okay, so this is how it's all coming about to 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, they were consistently doing these mutual aid drills, and I worked a lot near Bayonne Mott's Terminal, which is a military ocean terminal for the Navy, and a bunch of other things, right? And you see a lot of different things come through there. Uh, Things for mass destruction, like 4-person coffins stacked to the thousands and things like that. You're like, what is that for? So it's just things that you notice throughout your whole career,
Mhm.
and then you start seeing things change, okay? And not so much for the better, but as you go in, you don't notice it because you're involved. So
Mhm.
speeding up, 9/11 happened. I was basically assigned, I was there in the beginning, coming home from a tour at night and witness what happened. So I go back into the city and I hook up with a bunch of people I knew from Jersey City and a bunch of paramedics that were in my class. We were St. Vincent's paramedic class. We went to St. Vincent's Hospital, which is on 7th Ave and West 11th in New York. It's one of the main hospitals that were involved in there. It doesn't exist anymore. Um, so that's where I was trained a year before 9/11 and ended up that people, me and like 3 other people that were in my class were basically on Chambers Street, which was right down the block from Building 7. So the whole thing happened. And I mean, this is after we were on the pile. We just regrouped and went back and kind of organized to Chambers Street. And the guy I was with, the people I were with, they were like all in charge of like Lennox Hill and Mass. Like they all became, the advisors of
Mhm.
what was going on. So we basically got imploded by Building 7, right? And from there, it was just the world's just collided. They just changed drastically. So long story short, I end up in Baltimore with a bunch of other, I guess, New York and New Jersey and Puerto Rico. A lot of Puerto Rico transplants. Okay, didn't understand it at the time, and I came in at the end of the Clinton administration where they were hiring grants, and this is where they kind of caught everybody into the funding, and this is how like that takeover happened, kind of. That was like the end part of that.
Mhm.
So in Baltimore, um, I was only in the street as a uniform officer for about maybe 4 months, and then I went into a lot of plainclothes work. Um, did a lot of gang stuff, and uh, there were these units that are controlled by the feds, usually ATF, or the marshals. And what they would do is they're like high intensity drug trafficking units. And I wasn't so much with them, but I was more involved with the mobile enforcement teams, which were kind of like the uniform part of those units. Um, so I kind of worked both sides. Oh, sorry guys. Uh-oh.
I
Um,
see you.
okay, so I kind of worked both sides, and this is where I started seeing there were two departments within a department. All right. And a lot of questions I had, and I got schooled luckily by the end of the end of the guys who the old guard, let's say. Okay. The guys who were kind of just in there to, I guess, protect the guys who didn't know as much as they can. Okay. But that's all gone now for the most
Mhm.
part. So that's my background. I got into um a lot of maritime stuff. Baltimore is a very So this is where I could open up big time. Baltimore is a very key place of what happened to our country back in the early days. Okay. And there's a specific reason why I was chosen or asked to go to Baltimore. Okay. And this is how I understand these things. And standing in my truth, asking questions, refusing constitutional orders basically got me ambushed and shot by some corrupt cops. Okay. Um, that are in line with the gun trace task force. So if you look at the history, if you actually just go on HBO or look up gun trace task force, Baltimore police, there's a whole mini series on what I'm talking about, right? So I'm named in a couple books, okay, and it's basically shows how I was set up and forced out, all right. Um, so this is how I understand all these things because I questioned, I went to task um, to the Baltimore Police Department. I just by asking questions. I was ambushed and shot and set up, and there's a whole weird stuff, following my career, that all fits in line with what we're trying to do. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so knowing
So,
that, I do know that a lot of the police officers agree. They just don't have a platform. That said, I'll yield.
okay. All right. So now you are, what assembly are you on?
I'm sorry. I thought I addressed that. Well, don't mind me. I'm on the Nevada Assembly right now. Right.
Okay.
Yep. I live in Clark County. I'm in New
Mhm.
Jersey and on Clark County,
Mhm.
right in Nevada.
Now, how do you serve now on the assembly? What offices do you have any? I know you served in the PKTF too. So what are your offices?
So right now, I'm not. I'm just a man living on the bottom. You know,
Okay.
I um, I haven't been too active because I have previously been involved with the marshals for a long time and PKTF, uh, when it was not PKTF. During the, I guess,
Mhm.
resurgence of it, right? So,
Mhm.
um, I really have no knowledge about what's going on there. I just thought everything was nice and candy. So that being said,
Okay.
no, I don't have any,
Mhm.
offices in Nevada right now.
Okay. So now you serve now in the PKTF in the communications department, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's where we are at this point. And
Mhm.
there's some other things on the horizon.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Now,
that's
for
about where I
you,
am.
the reason I'm asking for an advisory video from you is because I know as you describe your background and what you saw, and then your experience in investigations and communications, and the things that you do day to day that you haven't even hinted on with this conversation. That you know you have a lot of connections and you know what's going on the ground. And we got to get our boots on the ground and know how to navigate that. So I
Right.
want you to tell us a little bit about your your experiences with the de facto as you've come to learn what they do out there and how you know that that we have our sovereign rights as Americans, but they're not recognizing our sovereign rights as Americans. What experiences have you had in trying to get them to recognize the sovereign rights as Americans in your
Well,
experience?
well, I let me just back a hair up. So I knew something was up when you're a police officer, okay? And this doesn't happen to a lot of police officers that don't see a lot of stuff like in major cities, okay? There's people who run around just throwing paperwork at police, acting like lunatics, right? Nothing happens to them but trouble. I'm a sovereign citizen, I'm this and that, throwing like wrinkled copies of birth certificates and like just, you could tell like they have an idea, but they don't know kind of, they're getting bad information. However, then there's the people who are very calm when you approach them and just let them do what you're going to do. They ask certain questions, which make you think, like, who is this guy? This is me being a cop now, okay? Like, you get these things. And when you ask to the command staff, like, what's going on? Oh, they're all terrorists, this and that. They just already pre-labeled because they don't teach us this. So knowing that when you arrest these people, because I have, you know, um, sometimes nothing happens to them. They go to jail. However, there are times where the courtrooms are cleared, right? You were kicked out of the courtroom, and about 20 minutes later, you go in there, the judge is gone, and this guy's walking out with a smile on his face. So you you can't ask what happens because you get in trouble, right? So let's back again. I don't want to get off the subject, but when I was suspended, right, for doing these things and having a bunch of other things happen to me, they assigned me to the courts. So I asked them, why are the courts set up like a bank? Like, why are you securitizing court cases? And I got kicked out of that position immediately. Okay, so that's where I knew what was going on was legit. But you got to remember at the time, this is almost 15, 20 years ago now, there was only like USFL was just starting to come out. So this was all trust stuff. Like this was all things that were just the processes were just beginning. Okay, like the redemption manuals were coming out, and the problem was it wasn't what we needed. Okay, the only thing that I found was everybody was hating on this little grandma. So I said, I have to go investigate who everybody's hating on. And then, and that was it. It fit everything to a T. So, all right, ask your question again because I totally went off track, but that's the backstory to.
Well, you just explained a little answer to my question where you experienced this in the courtroom when the courtroom is vacated and you can't ask these questions. So
You're
that
not
was an
even allowed in
experience
there.
to telling us of what you seen on the ground. Now, some other experiences though that you have from day to day, like you explained to me how it is that you have to talk to the de facto in order to get them to stand down cooperatively. Give me some examples of how that interaction should go.
So that's very situational dependent, and it depends if you're dealing with an officer who has the IQ of plankton or if you're dealing with an officer who actually cares.
Mhm.
Okay, because when you're dealing with the IQ of plankton, there's nothing you can do. You kind of just have to let them do what they're going to do very peaceably. But the thing is, the key is you have to have it recorded. Okay, so you know, and this is a lot. So there's two different things we have to establish right now. Okay, this is all about self-governance. Okay, this is not something that anybody can do for anybody because you have to express your law in a way where it's peaceful but authoritative and basically educational. All right, but you again, like this, it gets tricky because you're not gonna. I mean, I pushed the limits because I was actually a police instructor where I played the sovereign citizen. You understand? Because this just it's. I mean, I was the guy who who fought the police in the training exercises and, stole their guns and ran away and stole their police cars. So that's the kind of stuff I did as a cop. All right. I was an instructor. I did a lot of things like that. So it's called red team work. You're basically a bad guy to um expose the links.
Mm.
You're not a bad guy, but you have to, right? How do you catch monsters? You
Have to
need a
play the
monster to
part.
catch a monster, right? So,
Okay.
you'll see with me. I'm very emotional, but I do things for a very, very specific reason. Okay. Um, that being said, with these people, you cannot be scared of them. Like I'm not scared of them. Do I still, to this day, right? Get get the goosebumps when there's a cop behind me? Yes, 100%.
Even a cop gets the goosebumps when a cop's behind him.
Well, I do. Yes, 100%. Yes.
Mm.
Um, so that being said, you know, no, most people don't have the opportunity to have the interaction and to actually teach these people, right? Because I taught them, so I understand and I could push those limits. I don't recommend that to people who aren't part because you have to understand something. There is no bigger honor than being a peacekeeper. All right. And that's what these guys do. Well, I would say within the last 10 years, it started to change because they're hiring different people. But these are the people that wake up and dress up as cops as kids and they do the right thing. And so knowing that, you can't just tell them things. Okay. You're not gonna give them orders. So what you have to do is you're constantly like asking questions. Okay. So like you have to state express your law. For example, give me your driver's license. Well, am I driving? You ask all these questions, but you give it to them. However, you give it to them under conditions. Like, yeah, I'll give you my driver's license, but it's going to cost you about, maybe $1,000 for the first offense, and a dollar a minute, until you're done with it, because you have absolutely no right of stopping me. If you're going to tell me to do this, then what's to say that you're going to tell me to go home and mow your lawn? Like, where's it end? Okay, so they're going to do what they're going to do. You just have to can take it. You have to take it. You have to understand what's happening. You have to rebut it in a way where they almost like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? But be stern. The thing is, you have to follow it through. Okay, you have to take it because they're gonna ignore you. They're gonna threaten you, with letters and physical. Because I've had physical threats over this. I've had police cars because I used to run before I had all these surgeries. I used to run about 8 miles a day on the street, and I've had police cars after I'd taken this to the municipal court brush up against me with their mirrors, right? So like it's physically threatening. Like there's things that they do to try to intimidate you. Um, so basically, I came up with the self-governance way, and you just you basically use Anna's process in Disclosure 101. I mean, that's kind of the gist of it, but you do it in as it pertains to you and your situation.
Give us a
Okay.
breakdown. Give
Say
us a
again.
situation. Give us a situation, and then apply Disclosure 101 to it in self-governance. Whether it's somebody getting a property tax bill, or somebody got a citation on the side of the road, or somebody um, got some type of issues going on with them. Pick an issue and give us a application.
Pick one. Anything. It's law is easy. Go ahead,
Mhm.
pick one.
Let's do property tax.
Okay.
Where
Give me a
people
situation.
are saying they're going to stop paying their property taxes, and now 3 years down the road they get going, their homes are going to a tax sale, and now they don't have a home.
So I can speak from personal experience. I tried before, I met and started doing the what we're doing now. I tried that. I had a trust set up, years before any of this stuff, and I probably would have been okay, but my ego at the time was, oh, I got you. I don't have to pay this. My van got repoed, right? So knowing that, I would have just continued the payments, okay? Knowing what I know now, once I got the evidence, okay, because it has to be done in fact, right? You can't introduce, they can't, once you introduce law into what they're doing, it disappears. All right. So you take what they're doing, apply it and you put it, you basically go after the titles. Okay. So once you go after the titles, because the titles are what? You're a mister, they address you as this. It's almost like Yusufruct, and it's almost the same process, but we didn't have that at the time. Like we didn't know about that. You understand? So what you're doing is going after the titles and breaking away from the fictions. All right. And by you, like you have to understand what original, you know, general superior concurrent jurisdiction is, right? What is that? What does that mean? How does that apply to this? What does Anna's, disclosure 101 teach us how to do? So what that book did is basically it's set up because they have law, land, air, and water, and she addresses, all jurisdictions through that book, but she's doing it more as a sovereign organization, okay, because she's for all of us, right? And what you have to do is self-governance. So you have to take away basically what I did, okay? What I did was take away, again, I'm not ordering anybody to do this. What I did was I took away all the national stuff, okay? Because to me, when I'm going at them, they don't know what a national is, right? But they know what a man is and a woman is, right? Okay, so to me, a national is just a title when it comes to self-governance. So I took that away. Yes, I'm a national, an American national on Clark County, but that's my standing. But now I left it as that. This wasn't had nothing to do. Like that's why the assemblies can't help people. Like you have to understand. Like I had to go through my own fire. All right, I had to go through baptism by fire. Right, I had to go through the fire. Right, but I also had to offer redemption to the people who hurt me because what do we do? There's a rescue mission. All right, this isn't the legal system. If you're creating controversy, okay, no matter, I understand you have to rebut things that aren't true, but there's a time and a place. All right. If you are continuing any type of controversy, well, then that gives the archons, that gives the dead entities life because they live off fiction, controversy. Okay, so what do? We approach it as men and women. All right, you don't go in there using their system with their paperwork, trying to do writs of mandamus and all this crazy crap that they come up with. You go in there and hold your court as a man. You use them to administer your law. If the other person, excuse me, if the other man or woman, right, cannot provide a legal excuse as to why they screwed you.
Mhm.
Okay, so and at that point, this takes away all the accusations, all the things because you're going to them and you're just doing it friendly, like, hey, like, Bill, you know, dude, your dog came and crapped all over my freaking flowers. Like, what's going on here? You know, I'd probably laugh at it and just wouldn't care. But you understand, but it's a friendly thing. Hey, what are we gonna do about this? But if you're going into controversy, if you're going into something like this and you're doing dirt yourself, well, it's not gonna work. You understand? So you have to, even though you've been wronged, you have to say, hey man, like if there's something I did to you to cause this, like let me fix it and we could and I can understand basically, you understand? So you have to come to them because they don't know what's going on. But solicitor generals and justices know law because they know contract and they know trust law and they know property law. Okay, so what does property law have to do with this, right? You're a property owner, right? Who are you? This isn't Bobby you're seeing. This is Bobby. This is my property. This is just a meat suit, right? My property. We're all property owners, right? This isn't us. This is our property to move around in
Navigate
this
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 world.
this in this world. That's it, right? So we are all our own. You understand? So like every time I go in there, and this is and this is why I've held off because it's not about the money. It's about holding them accountable. You understand? So because once I took this to the eighth district, I went to the eighth circuit. Like this is in the eighth circuit. Okay. All these papers, everything I've ever took, everything, I mean the files. It cost me $100 to send every department head. I probably thousands of dollars on this. Just in you know um mailings, right? But it's funny because now all these people I mailed to, they're all contacting me on LinkedIn. All right, so this is where to get back to what we were talking about, how do you get to these people? It can't be from the outside. You have to start with the retirees and prove and show them because you got to understand they're still dealing with child support, they're still dealing with garnishments, they're still dealing with everything we deal with on top of that stuff. So if we could provide them, and here come the Jets because I'm getting serious now, right? Can't make this up. So if we can provide them a link, right? Because they need services. People like me need services. I'm lucky. I have you guys, right? I found American nationals. Like this is what it's about, right? They don't know about this. Um, so and this is how the radios and the communication plays because you know they need to get on the radio and hold something and say this is now real because I'm part of my old crew again. But how do I stop them? Because I see them getting screwed. Now the retired guys have a direct in because they're recently attached. They're prior service members. So this is say, hey man, like, you know, the FOP, their lawyers aren't. They screw everybody. Nothing. No one gets help from the FOP or any of their lawyers.
What's
So that's why
FOP?
FOP is the Fraternal Order of Police. It's like the police
Oh, okay.
union. So that's like the number one. It's the oldest police union, and you gotta. So the FOP, this is a whole nother thing. It's a fraternal brotherhood. It's a fraternal order. The basic, it's basically a pentagram in a circle, right? Is the FOP's thing. Um, so that connects with a lot of other things that I talk about. But to bring it back here is the command staff can't do anything without orders. All right. So where does that come from? That basically comes from the top. It's their president. It's the marshals, the U.S. Marshals, right? And it's probably the Department of State, I would say, but um, it's our direct
So,
link is the Marshal Service.
the U.S. Marshal Service? You- So you're saying in order for say, the assembly as a whole to be effective in getting the de facto employees to stand down or to listen to our directives for what we want them to do, they need to go a certain route, maybe the U.S. Marshals, retirees, somebody from the inside, and establish a connection with them, a rapport with them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. You have to show them how it's going to benefit them. You just got to remember,
Mhm.
like we're coming from they're in a very when I say Martian, I mean it's a very militant patriarchal system. They don't want to hear a matriarchal system coming in and giving them orders. You understand?
Mm.
You got to
Mhm.
think about it that way.
Okay.
All right. So, um, coming at it with teeth, that's what they want because it's controversy, right? How do you help them?
So come at it, how are we going to service you? What are we going to provide for you? And this is how we
Yes,
can work together.
100%. Because you have to remember if there are employees and we're just constantly nailing them and telling them how much how they're garbage and telling them what they're doing wrong, right? They're going through a bankruptcy. They don't even know they're going through a bankruptcy. They just know there's thousands of them getting fired. Where are they going to go? Guess what? We need thousands of people that are in the
Okay.
same line of work. But just
Mhm.
the problem is I'm trying to get people to see that we have to rebrand law enforcement into peacekeeping and provide them a solution to their problem. We're not the ones who created it, but we're the ones who could help them.
Ah, that's
Yeah,
good.
do you
Mhm.
understand? You see,
Yeah.
uh, because and that relates to, you know, these guys reaching out for help now because what their legal system is failing them. It's crumbling by the day, and they see all the people who were, I guess, they know who are the real common law police officers because they're the ones who are not allowed to do anything. You understand? So those are the ones they're getting rid of. You understand? And they're just, yeah. And why hiring Puerto Rico back in the day? Why did that happen? I forgot about that little thing. Because guess where the Spanish law of the Inquisition comes from? Guess
Okay.
what Baltimore is, right? Think about it. Like when you hear Lord Baltimore, you just might as well just, it's like Lord Vader. Like, I mean, no coincidences, right? So anyway, let me come down from
So
Bobby's world and
let's go back to, so we talked about the how the assemblies would need to approach it, but let's go back to the state national. Back to where you said, I didn't use the word state national. They don't know what that is, just the man or woman. And we were
yes.
using the example of the house, but in your case, you said they took your car or your van. Let's
Hmm.
let's go back there and explain more how you actually approach that. And you mentioned all these stacks of papers that you filed in District 8. What was all that about?
So those were claims. Those are actual claims, and this is how the claims were set up exactly the way Disclosure 101 was. Disclosure 101 is like that is the claim. That's my whole claim. However, it's adjusted towards me and my situation without using any type of state national or titles. It's basically all written in the present because everything's continuing, right? Because if you say this happened to me, well, then you're you're expressing because you're spell casting as you speak, right? You're expressing this is a mute issue because it's over, right? So talking to them in the present on paper, right? Holding your own court as a man because you have to understand they can't they can't even approach you. The only thing they could do is they have very limited jurisdiction, right? In the land of the dead, right? They can't approach you as a living person. So that's where learning how to keep the judge in check. All right, because what they'll do is, Your Honor, Your Honor, I'm not afraid to go in there. I will go in there and stand to the judge, right, and go all across the bar. I will. I have no problem about that. However, if I mean, I've sat in jail for 3 days over that, but nothing happens. It's not on my record, like it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, you start presenting your claim. I'm a man here today, Your Honor, and I'm pressing a claim against, right, another man who has trespassed against me. Okay, so how would it?
So are you talking about, at that point, are you talking about the attorney?
No, there is no
Or
attorney. There is. I'm
okay.
walking in there myself. So what I'm talking about is if they're trying to bring legal at you, you have to sit there. I am a man here today, right? And I am pressing claim because we don't do cases. We don't sit there and complain as a man or a woman, right? We don't complain because who are you complaining to, right? You hold your court, right? But the thing is, there's more to it. You have to give orders to the court. You have to explain what jurisdiction you're coming from. You have to explain who you are, how you're standing, right? How you um how you gathered your facts, how you were harmed, how you were trespassed. You have to have facts, evidence, right, brought to them. Then you have to have it's the administration process, but it's not the legal administration process. You have to basically start out friendly and say, hey man, like here's a conflict. Let's settle this before it goes to court. You know what I mean? It's between me and you. It's cool. Like you can settle it. They ignore you, blah blah blah. So you escalate it into a notice, right? So now it's official. Now you're writing a notice. If something grave has happened, well then you just straight out boom, all three escalation notices at once. Okay, but something like that can take time. Something civil, something that's not necessarily a crime, but that you've been financially harmed with, like your property or something like that. Well, then here, send them escalating notices. Um, but the main part of that is you have to get to the part where something is post due. All right. So what makes something post due? You need debt. How do you get debt? All right. Debt is a bill that's been unpaid and then has become post due. Okay. So you send them notices with your fee schedules, and you know, after about the third notice, you say, hey, I've asked you this amount of money, blah 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 blah. You refused to pay me. Here's the last two notices in escalating order, right? So now that you say that there's money owed to you, or fees owed to you, and now you send it through the postage. Now it's post due, right? Because it's not past due anymore. It was past due. Now it's post due. Okay. So once you get that post due notice with the recorded number, right? Now you could probably just use it. Prior to Express is the last I used. I used to just use registered mail. Actually, I started using certified mail, but then I realized that's for corporations. Okay, so I stopped using certified mail a long time ago, but registered mail was just so expensive. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars just on mailings. Anyway, um, so the judge sees this, you write your orders, you set the rules for your court. Okay, this is all going to the judge in increments throughout the whole thing from the beginning, initial controversy, right? You set this all in order. Okay, there's a whole process, right? And basically, your claim after all the non-responses and the acquiescences and all the evidence is compiled, you set it up in disclosure 101 format, and that's what you submit to um, the clerk of the court in the district. Okay.
Mhm.
So, but before I did that, I was witnessed by the one of the coordinators in Nevada at the time. He went to my municipal court case just as a witness, and I did the same exact thing. I went there twice, stood the judge down. They ended up throwing out the case, and that was it. It's gone. We can't find it. Like we can't find the case. So then, after that happened in the municipal court, right? That's when I took it to the Eighth Circuit. All right, but I did something on purpose. We're not supposed. Those are our courts. We're not supposed to pay for them. This is not about money for me. Okay, this is about literally accountability, right? And redemption is a rescue mission. Okay, I'm not trying to hang them on the back of my bumper. Like I want them to understand. I'm sure 90% of the people I've worked with in that legal system, they are good people. They just want the right thing done, but they don't know what that is. So hope I'm not babbling, but my thing is you have to take them through that process. You have to hold them accountable. Go through the court. If you're having problems with the IRS, call the commissioner into court, send them a summons, put your money where your mouth is. You have to take them to court. So, but what I did is I let the judge trespass on my case because she wouldn't do it if I didn't pay. I don't have to pay. However, at any time, because it's all fraud, right? Fraud vitiates everything. I could go in there, and now I'm still waiting because now we have to wait, and it's a game now because that whole district municipal it's gone. So now what happens?
Right, it's bankrupt.
Here's something else that you have to realize. Everything has to deal with these townships and cities. They have charters to exist. Okay, so what you do is you pull their charter. You pull their charter, you send it to the county commissioners, you send it to everybody, you send it to the eighth district, you send it to the provost marshal, right? You send it to the Vatican, you send it to everybody. And I did. There's about 120 people I sent all my stuff to. That's why it cost me thousands of dollars to do these mailings, right? So once all these people have these notices, okay, they I'm not saying I have the charter of City of Las Vegas in my hands, but if there's any more harm that comes to me because of this, I could just take this literally. I could convene a common law jury, go right to the Hague. I could go into their own district court and hold my own court, and they have to do it. And guess what? The only other court that we could do this at is the Federal Court of Appeals. Okay, that is the only other place that you could send this, and they have. I've sent my case to them, my claims to them, but I didn't press it yet. Okay, there's a difference. That court was the court you go to when you were done dirty by government workers. All right. So you have to actually go in there and walk in there and press and hold your court. So that's what I do. That's different than a lot of people may not understand. And I write different. I make my own forms. and I leave a lot of spelling errors and grammatical things to be scrutinized because that's who I am. I'm allowed to make mistakes, right?
Uh,
And I am who I am, like it or not,
so
right?
that is a interesting approach, because I know coming through the siren movement, or whatever, whatever we want to call it, after my 20 some years, um, early on we was learning, don't go to their courts. And we also learn that now. I mean, now we do not want to be in their courts, but we have come to I heard Anna say, if all the things that are lawful that don't work with your processes, then you do have the option to go to the courts, to their courts, and point out to them their fraud and their misadministration
Yes,
of their legal codes.
yes.
Hmm.
So, and that's the hard part, and I see a lot of that happening in the assemblies right now. All right, and I'm not trying to harp on anything. This isn't a bad thing. I just think one of the main problems is that there's a gap. There are the old timers who have been doing this, and they can't do what they've done anymore. It's not it's too much work, you know. And then there's this big gap where, I'm talking new people like under 5 years have so much ambition, but they're just bringing legal. Okay, they don't do it on purpose. It's 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 it happens. I mean, I to this day I still catch myself talking things something. When I write fast, it goes right to the first thing you've learned. They teach you that for a reason, right? Um, so people aren't fortunate enough. Now I say this to you know lose their job like I have and have 8, 10 hours a day, right, studying this stuff. That's not practical for everybody. Okay, like that can't happen, and that's why I'm in the positions I'm in, is because I know if I don't do everything I possibly can to correct the shit that I did to people, not knowing that I did it, then I can't go to bed at night. You understand? So this is, I mean, I got shot over this. Like this is huge. Like I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. You understand? That's why hey, you got to remember, man. I grew up in the days of Tony Gigante, right, in the village. Who was Tony Gigante? He was the mob guy who used to dress in a bathrobe, acting like he was crazy to avoid prosecution, right? So there's a lot of things that hmm, there's a lot of things you pick up over the years, right? That 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 you don't necessarily see unless you have time in. And here's the thing: I have been wrong so many times that I just, by process of elimination, I just realized what was right. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. Like I'm not doing it. Like the only way to learn is to make mistakes. Like that's how you have to. You have to make mistakes. So,
Let's go to the one experience that we were talking about on another call, about the license plates, your
oh
process for that.
yes. All right. So again, let me back up. I didn't just throw these at the time. It was the national license plates, right? I didn't just throw those on my thing and roll. I had I have been in constant communication with motor vehicle. Well, Nevada, it was DMV, right? So I told them the whole process. Like, here's my thing. Like, listen, I know what's going on. Literally laid it out. Um, everybody who needed to know. So when I got pulled over by North Las Vegas, because of the license plate, Nove you know, that was all. That was all. I gave them a picture of my license plate and sent it to them and said, "This is what I'm doing. If you don't want this on my car, give me something else or let me know. Or if you acquiesce, I'm just going to do it." So that's where I kind of got them by the cojones. Okay, they were already notified by me. So now actually I have these things that I'm making, right? These are all prototype stuff. So if you could get,
The APC,
yeah,
PKTF. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like this little sticker I'm making, right?
Uh-huh.
Right there. Um, and it's really small. It's about the size of your registration stickers that you can stick in the corners of your license plate, right? Um, and my idea is, all right, the license plates are great, but they're not playing ball, obviously, because they stole mine, right? They literally pulled me over, and I have the whole thing on video, right? Pull me over and steal my plate. Can't do that. So, um, my thing is you could have these made where you just scan them, okay, and it adds to their system. You're not necessarily having to register your car, but how cheap is it for them to just print out another sticker for an ash? You know what I'm saying? It's almost the same thing as like a Z thing. You know, you could actually just either just something like this or just a straight Z sticker that you could put where no one even has to know. It's not a big deal. It's only for law enforcement knowledge. You don't have to publicize it to the whole everybody if they don't want to. But the thing is, we have to figure a way for them to stop nailing us on it because they know. And here's the problem. And this is why I say you have to. They know what's going to happen is you're going to write some letter. No one's ever going to take them to court, right?
Mm-hmm. So on your license plates, you got that little sticker on there on one of the corners where they put their sticker on on the right corner. You got this sticker on the left corner.
Yeah, I'll show it to you right now as we talk.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I mean that will take care of a lot of things. And again, it's just they don't they can't admit any of this because once they admit it, then they think they're gonna get hung. Because
Okay.
what are they admitting? You understand what I'm saying? Like, what are they admitting?
Mm-hmm. So
Uh,
you sent them your pre-notices of this is what I'm going to be using, and you have their license plates on there and your
mm-hmm,
sticker.
correct.
Ah, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I don't know why it's so blurry right now. Hello. Let
mm-hmm.
me do this.
Yeah, it's still a little blurry. Hmm. But we get the gist
Yeah,
of it. We can see that
yeah, it's
much.
like right up in
Hmm.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
And
Um,
what's the rationale behind using their license plates and your sticker? Why is
well,
that significant?
because it's their system. We don't need their stuff. It's just identify us in their system, basically.
Uh, okay, that helps.
Because that's not us. The problem is, you know, they're singling out. Oh, there you go. They're singling out the plates. It's a hate crime. Okay.
Mhm.
Do you really want to get like involved in it? If you don't really know what you're doing, like me, I don't care. Like they're not, they don't scare me. Like I've trained a lot of them, so they're not. I don't consider them a threat to me. You know, um, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
That's an interesting approach with the license plates too. And uh I think
Oh, big.
that helps us kind of get a different perspective on how we can approach this thing from the assembly point of view, and then also from the the man or woman point of view. But
Yeah.
thanks. Is there anything else that you would like to leave for the assemblies or the nationals before we end this call today?
Study. Do your
Mm-hmm.
due diligence. Because what do? Right? We do diligence. Due diligence, right? Corpus
Mm-hmm.
delicti, right?
All right.
Study. You have to do your due diligence and study and put your
That
time
will
in.
be it.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby. Well, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. You take care, okay?
Anytime. Absolute.
All right then. Bye-bye.